Good morning and welcome this Tuesday morning to Coffee with Dan. I have in my studios today Mr. Dileep Mudadeniya. He is the Vice President of John Keels Group, Head of Brand Marketing, Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. He holds a Bachelor of Arts from University of Colombo and is an attorney at law by profession. He heads the brand marketing of Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts, apart from being the Vice President of the John Keels Group. Welcome on studios, Dileep.
Good morning, Dan.
This morning we are going to talk about Sri Lanka's hotel industry. And to start with, let me ask Dileep, what is the tourism industry look like for the next 5 years?
I think the prospects are quite enormous. Currently, Sri Lanka receives about 2.2 million tourists, which also gives about 2.2 billion US dollars in terms of foreign exchange earnings, and has given the employment for over 200,000 direct employment and another 200,000 indirect employment. And this is actually the second or the third largest foreign exchange earner to the country after tea, as well as Sri Lankans working overseas, and almost beating the textile industry. I think it's tight within the next 4 or 5 years. Once the numbers hits to 3 or 4 or 5 million tourists, the industry has a potential of reaching or becoming the #1 foreign exchange earner to the country. So it has immense potential, which means tourism industry is going to be the #1 industry in Sri Lanka within the next at least 5 years and going beyond.
Looking at Sri Lanka as a tourist destination, and especially in the eyes of the hotel industry, what are the strengths and weaknesses that you see in our country?
Based on the input given by the various visitors to the country, the biggest asset that we have is the beauty of the country, which can be divided into two. One is natural attractions in the country. The second one is historical man-made attraction in the country. Those are the two most important elements that we have been actually virtually selling rather than promoting it for this last 20 years in tourism, and fortunately still these things are actually becoming a highlight and attraction. And when the people come to Sri Lanka, they basically fall in love with the country and also the hospitality of the people, etc. So that is element which I think something which needs to consider. But having said that, we also have to keep in mind that unlike other countries, Sri Lanka has not really added any man-made attractions since 1978. The last time was Elephant Orphanage, and since then we have not been able to put something attractive enough. But we are actually riding on the beauty of the country, natural beauty, and the historical monuments, etc., that we have in the country, which includes 7 World Heritage Sites, etc. So we need to preserve these attractions as well as the natural beauty, if in order to continue our success so far as an attractive destination.
What are the challenges faced by Sri Lanka tourism?
I think it's a very challenge. I mean, it's extremely a good opportunity out there, because most of the international established destinations are having problems. Countries like Egypt and Middle East countries are having a big issue, and Latin American countries have some issues. So Sri Lanka has the ideal environment. One of those countries where you don't see a military presence from the time you arrived at the airport. There's in a single country in Europe where you just feel like Sri Lanka like 15 years ago. Where you had the military presence and the safety factor and all. The Sri Lanka is one of the safest countries in the world, and so that's something I think we need to keep that in mind as a destination. So that is we need to actually protect that and then move forward. So keeping that in mind, in terms of challenges that we are going to face as industry, is whether are we making use of that opportunity in terms of promotions, in terms of activities that we need to do for the country, as well as whether we're trying to attract the right kind of tourists to the country. So those are some of the challenges that we are facing. And also not maybe the question of whether are we making optimum use of the current the world scenario, which is in favor of Sri Lanka.
When you talk about the optimum utilization of Sri Lanka's resources for the benefit of promoting tourism and in fact the hotel industry getting benefited out of it. Now, what are the economic benefits you see in the tourism industry?
The biggest benefit on the tourism industry anywhere in the world is the foreign exchange earnings to the country, because we need dollars. Of course, as a developing country, our debt ratio is quite high, and as a result, the foreign exchange earnings is a must. And so tourism gives that. Every foreigner who's coming in bringing dollars from other countries to Sri Lanka. So that's one. So that currently is around almost over around 2.5 billion dollars in terms of foreign exchange earnings estimated. So this is it's a good development. Second thing is employment generation. This overall there's direct employment and indirect. For example, a fisherman and a vegetable supplier to a doorman to a general manager and engineer of a hotel. So all these are actually people involved in the whole supply chain in tourism, which will have a direct impact. The third one is image. When tourists comes to the country, they talk about, they see the country, they go back and tell their friends, a beautiful country, good hospitable people. There are certain things that made Ceylon tea and whatever we made in Sri Lanka, you need to buy it. So there's an impact on the country branding as well when people are coming in, and also some of them actually end up in investors. So tourism has a spillover effect in various other industries, and it can be a thrust industry where people can actually, country can benefit overall economically, not only from revenue but also from reputation perspective.
Now, Dileep, when we talk about the hotel industry, now there are two segments of customers, local customers as well as international customers. Now, you were talking about attracting foreign travelers to Sri Lanka and promoting Sri Lanka as a vibrant destination, and then the hotels benefit in return. But there is also a lot of criticism against our hotel industry that it's too expensive for the local customers, and that has become a reason for local customers to go to countries like Thailand or Vietnam these days, and at a very affordable price. So what's the rationale behind this?
I mean, the pricing will depend on the cost of living on the country. In Sri Lanka, the taxes are quite high. There's a 31% taxes from over and above what you pay. If the $100 is a cost room, then you have to pay 31% on top of that as taxes. Then you also have the cost of operation. Electricity, the imported food that's going to cost. All that will add into that operational cost. So all in all, Sri Lankan hotel currently rates are, I wouldn't say cheap, but it's somewhat in par with some of the other destinations in Asia. But as you said, certain countries like Thailand, Vietnam, because of their capacity, they're in a position to dump the prices and then give us sometimes attractive rates, and also with good airline packages. So which makes people to think that better to go out of Sri Lanka than staying in Sri Lanka. So this is a phenomenon that we have seen in most of the countries. For example, Indians think that better to come to Sri Lanka than going to Goa or any other domestic, because they like to get into a plane and go and get that foreign experience. But I would say, there is some significant growth in the local travel within the hotels, and that's a formal sector. There's informal sector also, I think, benefited by the local travel. It's good to have a good local base at any time during our trouble time. When Sri Lanka is going through, not many tourists were coming. It was the locals who patronized and kept it going. So it's very important to understand the mentality and the needs of the local community and cater to that as well. So that we are not actually neglecting our own people. And I think all hotels are currently working on that and giving that promise and taking care of the local guest also.
In connection to your answer, I would like to ask, now we see sometimes, or rather from time to time, there are certain hotel chains that offer attractive discounts by using credit cards or some facilities like that. And why do hotels give these kinds of discounts? Is that because they don't have 100% occupancy, or is that to be in the market to attract the visitors?
Well, it depends on the season. These offers are not available during the season or when the high occupancies are there. So, like any other business, the hotel business also we have what we call season and off season. So, what happens is during the season there is no need of giving discounts because you can run with the existing business, and off season is where you need rooms. So, if you run 100% during season and the balance 6 months, if you run only 10%, then your occupancies will come down by 50%. So there is no need to sort of have empty rooms. So in that case, most of the time, there's an aggressive promotion by credit card companies. They come and sometimes absorb the part of the discount and then work with us to create something good for their client base. So it's something, formula that have been working well, and so they continue to do that. And that's why the reason. So in one hand, we have the empty rooms. The other hand, basically you have credit card companies who are willing to give extra discounts on their own, and then to induce their clientele to give value addition. So that's why it's coming through. But it doesn't normally, you don't find that during season.
Now, you are an expert in the branding section, and you have been involved. I remember when you were young, you were involved in various hotel chains and tourism industries, and also you were very connected with France and so forth in promoting Sri Lanka's tourism industry. Now, what strategies should Sri Lanka adopt when marketing the destination?
I think currently, so I'm also a member of the task force of tourism, but we are working on implementing some of these recommendations. So the main thing is, Sri Lanka is an island, and we have the diversity, and we are in a small time, like a limited number of hours of traveling, we can visit so many beautiful places, and it's compact and it's authentic. So we call Asia's compact, authentic, diverse island. That's what, which makes different from other countries. So this needs to be communicated properly, and this needs to be highlighted properly through strategic communication by any destination campaigns. So those destination campaigns needs to be developed properly, it needs to be designed properly, and it needs to be communicated in respective markets, in respective languages, etc. That is the challenge which the National Tourism Organization currently, or any other national tourism organization, will face, and they need to put whatever the money which they have into these markets and design this campaign effectively, telling what the story of Sri Lanka in this manner.
This morning in Coffee with Dan, I have Mr. Dileep Mudadeniya. He is the Vice President of John Keels Group of Hotels, and he's the Head of Brand Marketing of Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. He is also the founder of the Center of Research and Sustainable Studies in Tourism. And we are talking about the hotel industry in Sri Lanka. So turning back to our discussion today, I would like to ask Dileep, now we at the moment going through the 2018 budget proposals, and that has emphasized many important elements in developing tourism and hotel industry as a whole. Now, how do you see budget proposals that affect the tourism and hotel industry?
I think this budget has given so much of emphasis and focus on tourism, and that is very encouraging to see that government has taken a serious note of this very, very important industry which has a huge potential to the country. There are some forward-thinking proposals in the budget which need to be looked at it, and then implementation of those things are the most important things, not only the proposal stage but the implementation, effective implementation of it. So number one is the support that is given for homestay. The homestay program is something which most of the countries have developed effectively. So it is very important that we give training and knowledge for such an homestay operators to run effectively. So the amount of fund that is allocated is a different question, but as his emphasis there is to do that. Second one is actually mode of transport, which is tuk-tuk. I have seen a very encouraging proposal of training tuk-tuk people and endorsing them and certified them, and so that the basic mode of transport is properly being trained, so that one of the leading customer touch points for tourists when they come here. So that's what is very important, to have that properly trained tuk-tuk drivers, and there's a program which is proposed by Sri Lanka, to be implemented by Sri Lanka Tourism. Then I also saw another proposal which is a very good thing, is promoting Sri Lanka food. it's something which we can easily brand. When you say Thai food or even Chinese food, Indian food, any other Mexican food, the country branding automatically moves in. But the Sri Lanka food having so much of variety and uniqueness, we've not been able to brand it properly. So that's initiative is also quite interesting. And also the infrastructure, rest of the industries, for example, the renovation and the restoration of the train network or the railway stations, which is actually a lot of people are starting moving, taking train because of the number of hours they had to spend on the road. So that restoration work is also quite interesting. And then of course there's a taxation, which is a different fiscal reasons for that they have added into online booking agents, etc. So all in all, and also the development facilities that is given for the development work, etc. So all in all, this budget is very encouraging, and hope this trend will continue. And the next year you can add little more, some more relevant stuff, especially of staging events in the country. We need to create conducive environment to create international events so that you get international footfall coming in, and also to encourage foreign film productions in Sri Lanka. There are some facilities that needs to be given, which has a direct correlation between correlation to there's an amount of money they can spend, economic impact as well as the reputation impact.
Yes, as you touched upon the food aspect of hotels. Now we know that in almost all hotels offer international buffet type food. Now, with your own observation, do you see that there is much trend towards consumption of local food or international food among the various visitors to the hotels?
It depends on how each hotel has designed. The buffet is somewhat easier when you have more than 50 rooms or 60 rooms and large number of guests coming in. Buffet will be the easiest form of preparation for the hotel. Is more cost effective and then economical and then also efficient in terms of delivery. Basically, I can talk about our chain, which is a cinnamon chain, has a very always given a special attention to local food, and every time that we have a buffet there is a section for Sri Lankan food. So at least the people will go and eat something familiar to them. They want to go and just test couple of Sri Lankan rice and curry, the dishes. The fish can be chicken, it can be rice, it can be any kind of vegetable that is been prepared, so they can do that. And some of the our own guests that who are going to the hotels, that means Sri Lankan guests who are going to the hotel, they also like to eat Sri Lankan rice and the curry and the Sri Lankan food, so that is available in hoppers to and different types of, whether it's morning or lunch or evening. So there is and also have seen this trend continuing in most of the buffets, and I think it's a very good trend because we don't have to spend a lot of money on importing food. If you can really promote and do it the right version, the right way of serving it to the guests, then I think they will actually start enjoying that, and it will have not only the promoting Sri Lankan food, but your cost will come down.
You also mentioned the importance addressing futuristic matters in the budget, especially like entertainment, promoting entertainment business in Sri Lanka. And we know that even the Sri Lankans, they go to countries like Singapore or India when there are star performers performing in those countries, like musicians and singers in very signature type shows. Now, do you think that Sri Lanka can do this, get engaged with this entertainment business as a means of promoting our hotel industry and tourism?
I think it's a must, because in Colombo itself we are adding another 4,000 rooms by 2022. About another 6,000 apartments will be added. So as a result, Colombo will need this diversification of entertainment. There's nothing to be done after 6 p.m. anywhere in the country. So that is not really good, because tourists start spending after 6 p.m. In the morning they'll go and visit, see whatever in the itinerary, and in the evening they'll start go and spending. So we need to create this entertainment. It doesn't have to be foreign all the time, can be something local productions, etc. So answering your question, then in terms of the foreign artists coming to Sri Lanka, I think we have a golden opportunity. The reason is that most artists don't like to go to India. That's the closest. As a result, lots of Indians would love to travel within 1 hour flight, come here, go for the concert and go back. And the economic impact of that is going to be, there's a triple effect, and there's a impact on the economy in terms of airlines, impact for rooms, and impact on the local businesses. So this is something I think we need to look at it. Currently, the lot of local promoters, the tourism task force actually did a research on this and identified that one of the biggest issue, there are two main big issues. One of the biggest issue is that the tax structure, that that we need to pay approximately 40% of your ticket sales as taxes. There's a VAT which is a 15%, there's NBT, then there is entertainment tax another 15%, there's another 10% withholding tax, so altogether it comes to 40%. And when you pay for the 40% of taxes in a small, relatively ticket price and not that expensive, then it's difficult to appeal and get the A-listers or the artists which you see in Singapore and Dubai and other countries who don't have the similar structure. That's one. Second reason is the venue. We don't have a proper venue for these artists to perform. And we need an arena or something if something can be done with Sugaddas outdoor stadium to convert that into an arena. So those are some of the things that we work on. If this can be fixed, these two, I think the private sector can take the lead and bringing these concerts on a constant basis, which will have a direct impact on the entire economy.
I know many tourists visit the Broadway in New York because it's one of the main key attractions in Manhattan in New York. So do you have any intention of bringing the Broadways to Sri Lanka as a means of promoting regional tourism?
Yeah, good that you asked it. And it's actually, we as Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts, I think will be the first hotel chain to do that. And for the first time in Sri Lanka, you will see a surprise that's coming up in February 14th next year. And in this direction, we will announce it very soon. And that will be the first time the Sri Lankan audience will experience in something alongside what you said.
So, what are the employment opportunities in tourism industry?
I think Sri Lankan youth should actually we should attract the Sri Lankan youth into this industry. We have enough and more opportunities. This is something which I think parents should think of sending their children, and the children, actually school children to university, should actually think of tourism as an industry to join. It's a very professional industry. There are many options in that. The hotel industry, there is travel agency industry, there's travel services, there can be entrepreneurs in tourism. So there are lots of services that are required within the tourism industry, because tourism industry is the biggest industry in the world. It's bigger than pharmaceutical, it's bigger than the weapons industry. So the biggest industry in the world, which is over 3 trillion economy, tourism in every country will also prosper, and also including Sri Lanka. So we need the youth to get involved because the opportunities are enormous. You can join as a doorman to a hotel and end up in a general manager, because that route is available, once you get experience, etc. And this is something where you also can get people from unskilled, semi-skilled and skilled. So the government doesn't have to spend a lot of money on creating these jobs, and these jobs can be created spontaneously, not like the investment the government has to make to do an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or anything else, which it makes little time. But tourism is something which you can create employment directly, and there are lots of opportunities. And then get in touch with us if you want to get into the industry. You have lots of introduction program, etc. And once you get in, you have overseas opportunities and in Sri Lanka as well.
Now, you very correctly mentioned that the opportunities are quite bountiful, but considering employment generation or one's capacity building, do you think that Sri Lanka's education system is quite equipped to take these challenges?
I think so, because we have a literacy rate of 99% altogether in the country, and this rate can be really used, and our people are hospitable, and that's why by nature. So that's why I think we have a good workforce which you can actually compete with any other destination, even in Thailand, which has a reputation for being hospitable. So Sri Lankan community, Sri Lankan youth is quite capable of achieving that. But we need some training, we need some for them to understand what tourism is. We need to just move away from the myths that tourism is only for elites, etc. We need the Sri Lankan youth to get involved in that perspective.
Let me ask in conclusion of our chat show today, how have we done compared to residential towers?
Residential towers are coming up aggressively in Colombo. There are about 6,000 rooms that are being constructed, and what happens is most of these rooms ended up in the market for renting purpose. So tourists love to come and take an apartment rather than going to a hotel. If there are a couple of rooms, they require 2-3 rooms, it becomes economical, and also gives them the freedom. So I think this will also be necessary for the market, and you will see some more rooms are coming up with the port city in the next by 2025, etc. So this will actually add a lot of required color, the required variety, and the market will actually have a impact as a result. So I think by 2021-22, Colombo will have a different landscape altogether, and look and feel of Colombo will be different, and I hope that will be like in par with any other international city which you find in Asia.
Just a small addition to that, even though I made the final question to you. Now, cinnamon hotels are involved in this Colombo waterfront development. How lucrative will that be?
I mean, that cinnamon life is basically going to change the entire landscape of the country. In Colombo, that's a 800-room hotel. It will have large number of apartments and also shopping complex, etc. And that's the first time a Sri Lankan group is putting up such a huge investment in the country, and that's scheduled to be open in 2020 and giving employment for a large number of people, the new banquet space, and that will actually be the place in Colombo for people to come and enjoy, and with the overview of the golf face, etc. So with all the other rest of the development happening in Colombo, we believe this infrastructure development will be the Marina Bay for Singapore and cinnamon life for Colombo.
This morning I had with me Mr. Dileep Mudadeniya. He holds a BA or Bachelor of Arts from University of Colombo, and he's also an attorney at law. He's a chartered marketeer and he holds a Master of Business Administration. Currently, Dileep is the head of brand marketing of Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts, and he's also a vice president of John Keels Group. Dileep is also the founder of the Center of Research and Sustainable Studies in Tourism. In today's Coffee with Dan, we have been discussing about the hotel industry in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Dileep, for being here in Coffee with Dan.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be in part of the program.
So we'll meet tomorrow morning with another Coffee with Dan.